Maybe you've stumbled upon a smart quote by an ancient Stoic philosopher, or you've read an article that shared some inspiring Stoic ideas. Maybe you've been told about that helpful and flourishing old philosophy by a friend, or you've already studied a book or two about Stoicism. Or maybe, although chances are very low, you've never even heard about it before. However, encountering Stoicism in one way or another is the easy part. Understanding and explaining exactly what it is, though, is the tricky part. Recognizing and seeing exactly how it's relevant today and how it can help you is the challenging part. Fully grasping it and putting it into practice is the ambitious part. That's where the gold is hidden. What the Stoics taught and practiced in the era of gladiators fighting for their lives and Romans socializing in steaming baths is still remarkably applicable in the era of Game of Thrones and Facebook. The wisdom of this ancient philosophy is timeless, and its value in the quest for a happy and meaningful life is undeniable. With this book, you're holding the treasure map in your hands. It introduces you to the leading philosophers. It gives you an easy-to-understand overview of the philosophy. It teaches you the core principles. It provides you with 55 Stoic practices and helpful hints for the application in your challenging life. And most importantly, it shows you how to translate it from book page to action in the real world. Cool. But how does a 20-something know how to write the Stoic treasure map for the good life? Fair enough. I'd be wondering about that too. After many years of school and university, I was sick of reading academic books and papers and learning about stuff that didn't really teach me anything of real-life value. So, literally the day after handing in my final paper, I left the country and started my 7-month-long travel around the world. I wanted to get away, see places and other cultures, but mainly, I wanted to get to know myself so I'd know what I wanted to do with my life when I got back. That last part did not work out. However, I did figure out something else instead. I somehow must have missed the class on how to live. In 15.5 years of schooling, I learned math, physics, chemistry, biology, and a bunch of other stuff except how to deal with challenging situations. How to face my fears and struggles, what to do about my depressive feelings, how to deal effectively with the death of my friend. What to do with my anger? How to be more confident? Nope, I must have missed all those classes. That, by the way, is exactly what schools of philosophy were all about in the ancient world. They taught you how to live. And even though these schools don't exist anymore, you and I and most people are in as much need of a philosophy that teaches us how to live as we ever were. Long story short, I decided to invest in myself and learn how to live well. From all the wisdom I devoured in the following years, Stoic philosophy helped me the most, even though it didn't start on good terms. Before I knew anything about the philosophy, I thought this must be the most boring thing on earth. I mean, after all, it's called Stoicism and not Supermanism or something else that would indicate it's worth studying. I gave it a shot anyway, got hooked, and since then I've been a voracious student and practitioner of Stoic philosophy. And even though I've read and reread countless books, I've always lacked a source that provides a simple overview and explains what exactly Stoicism is. So I wrote this massive article that should do exactly that. Give an overview of the philosophy and say what it's all about. Fortunately, many people loved the article and found it immensely helpful. So much, actually, that someone stole the exact content and sold it as his book. That did not only test my personal Stoic mindset, but all the 5-star reviews it got told me that people really want to learn about this philosophy. So here I am, passionately writing about what would have saved me countless weeks of research and would have provided so much sought-after and desperately needed wisdom from this exemplary philosophy. I'm positive that this book will contribute to the modern Stoic literature and, most importantly, that it will serve you well on your quest for the good life. Because that's really what Stoicism helps you with. Living a great life. Whatever you're going through, there's advice from the Stoics that can help. Despite the philosophy's age, its wisdom often feels surprisingly modern and fresh. It can help you build stamina and strength for your challenging life. It can help you become emotionally resilient so you'll neither get jerked around by outside events nor will others be able to push your buttons. It can teach you to handle yourself and stay calm in the midst of a storm. It can help you make decisions and therefore drastically simplify everyday living. He who studies with a philosopher, Seneca says, should take away with him some one good thing every day. He should daily return home a sounder man, or in the way to become sounder. Practicing Stoicism helps you improve yourself as a person. It teaches you to mindfully live by a set of desirable values, such as courage, patience, self-discipline, serenity, perseverance, forgiveness, kindness, and humility. Its many anchors offer security and guidance and will level up your confidence. And you can get that too. In fact, Stoic philosophy made the good life a reachable goal for everybody, cutting through social classes. Whether you're rich or poor, healthy or sick, well-educated or not, it makes no difference to your ability to live the good life. The Stoics were living proof that it's possible for someone to be exiled to a desert island and still be happier than someone living in a palace. They understood very well that there's only a loose connection between external circumstances and our happiness. In Stoicism, what you do with the given circumstances matters much more. Stoics recognize that the good life depends on the cultivation of one's character, on one's choices and actions rather than on what happens in the uncontrollable world around us. This, my fellow Stoic student, is at the root of a tough and at the same time highly attractive aspect of Stoicism. It makes us responsible and deprives us of any excuses for not living the best life possible. You and I were responsible for our own flourishing. We're responsible for not letting our happiness depend on external circumstances. We shouldn't let the rain, annoying strangers, or a leaking washing machine decide upon our well-being. Otherwise, we become helpless victims of life circumstances out of hand. As a Stoic student, you learn that only you can ruin your life, and only you can refuse to let your inner self be conquered by whatever nasty challenge life throws at you. So Stoicism teaches us to live by a set of values that contribute to emotional resilience, calm confidence, and a clear direction in life. Just like an old reliable walking stick, jerked around by outside events, nor will others be able to push your buttons. It can teach you to handle yourself and stay calm in the midst of a storm. It can help you make decisions, and therefore drastically simplify everyday living. He who studies with a philosopher, Seneca says, should take away with him some one good thing every day. He should daily return home a sounder man, or in the way to become sounder. Practicing Stoicism helps you improve yourself as a person. It teaches you to mindfully live by a set of desirable values such as courage, patience, self-discipline, serenity, perseverance, forgiveness, kindness, and humility. Its many anchors offer security and guidance and will level up your confidence. And you can get that too. In fact, Stoic philosophy made the good life a reachable goal for everybody, cutting through social classes. Whether you're rich or poor, healthy or sick, well-educated or not, it makes no difference to your ability to live the good life. The Stoics were living proof that it's possible for someone to be exiled to a desert island and still be happier than someone living in a palace. They understood very well that there's only a loose connection between external circumstances and our happiness. In Stoicism, what you do with the given circumstances matters much more. Stoics recognize that the good life depends on the cultivation of one's character, on one's choices and actions rather than on what happens in the uncontrollable world around us. This, my fellow Stoic student, is at the root of a tough and at the same time highly attractive aspect of Stoicism. It makes us responsible and deprives us of any excuses for not living the best life possible. You and I, we're responsible for our own flourishing. We're responsible for not letting our happiness depend on external circumstances. We shouldn't let the rain, annoying strangers, or a leaking washing machine decide upon our well-being. Otherwise, we become helpless victims of life circumstances out of hand. As a Stoic student, you learn that only you can ruin your life, and only you can refuse to let your inner self be conquered by whatever nasty challenge life throws at you. So, Stoicism teaches us to live by a set of values that contribute to emotional resilience, calm confidence, and a clear direction in life. Just like an old reliable walking stick. The promise of this book is really the promise of Stoic philosophy. It teaches how to live a supremely happy and smoothly flowing life, and how to retain that even in the face of adversity. It prepares you to be ready for anything, like a tower of strength, unshakable, deep-rooted, emotionally resilient, and surprisingly calm and mindful even in the midst of a hellfire. Stoicism can improve your life in good times, but it's in bad times when its efficacy becomes most apparent. It can be the light showing you the way through pitch-black depressive moments. It holds your hand when you need confidence to minimize emotional suffering by taming the bad guys like anger, fear, and grief. It can be your stepping stool to reach that tranquility you need when you're knee-deep in shit. It can be your strong backbone when you need to act courageously even if you're shaking like a leaf. It can be the clown that wakes you up and casts a smile on your face when you need it the most. In short, Stoicism not only shows you the way but also hands you the key to the good life. All you need to do is walk the path, turn the key, and enter. So, Stoic teacher Epictetus asks, how long are you going to wait? How long are you going to wait before you demand the best of yourself? You're no longer a child but a full-grown person, and yet you procrastinate, Epictetus reminds himself. You will not notice that you are making no progress, but you will live and die as someone quite ordinary. From now on, he warns himself, and all of us, to live like a mature human being and never set aside what you think is best to do. And whenever you encounter anything difficult, remember that the contest is now. You are at the Olympics. You cannot wait any longer. We don't have the luxury of postponing our training because, unlike the Olympic Games, the contest we participate in every day, life, has already begun. Life is right now. It's about time to start our training. Training in Stoicism is a bit like surfing, little theory and lots of practice. Right now, you can't wait to get started, and you imagine yourself standing on the surfboard hitting wave after wave, having the time of your life. Wait, I have to stop you right there, because in your first surf lesson, you get how to live a good life. This classic philosophic question stands at the origin of the primary concern of Stoic philosophy: how to live one's life, or the art of living. Stoic teacher Epictetus compared philosophy to artisans, as wood is to the carpenter and bronze to the sculptor. So are our own lives the proper material in the art of living. Philosophy is not reserved for wise old men. It's an essential craft for everybody who wants to learn how to live and die well. Every life situation presents a blank canvas or a block of marble that we can sculpt and train on, so that over a lifetime we can master our craft. That's basically what Stoicism does. It teaches us how to excel in life. It prepares us to face adversity calmly, and simply helps us sculpt and enjoy a good life. What makes someone good at living? According to Epictetus, it's neither wealth, nor high office, nor being a commander. There must be something else. Just like someone who wants to be good at handwriting must practice and know a lot about handwriting, or someone who wants to be good in music must study music. Someone who wants to be good at living, therefore, must have good knowledge of how to live. Makes sense, right? Seneca, another important Stoic philosopher we'll get to know in Chapter 2, said that the philosopher is the one who knows the fundamental thing, how to live. A philosopher literally translates from the Greek into a lover of wisdom, someone who loves to learn how to live, someone who wants to attain practical wisdom concerning how to actually live their life. As Epictetus told us before, if we want to become good at living, we must attain knowledge on how to live. This might surprise you, but philosophy is really a matter of practice, learning how to sculpt our lives. Thinking and philosophizing about the blank block of marble won't teach us how to skillfully use chisel and mallet. The Stoics were particularly concerned with applying philosophy to everyday life. They saw themselves as veritable warriors of the mind and thought the primary reason to study philosophy was to put it into practice. This is a great comparison made by author Donald Robertson in his book, The Philosophy of Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. He said that in ancient times, the ideal philosopher was a veritable warrior of the mind. But in modern times, the philosopher has become something more bookish, not a warrior, but a mere librarian of the mind. Effect: tranquility. In today's hectic world, it's what so many of us seek, to be able to stay calm, feel confident and secure, even in the midst of chaos. If we practice Stoicism, this is exactly what we get as a byproduct. It's a byproduct because it's not what the Stoics sought in the first place. They didn't seek tranquility, they sought eudaimonia, and tranquility came as an added and welcomed bonus. So it wouldn't really be consistent with Stoicism to practice it for tranquility's sake. What's tranquility anyway? Seneca talks about the power of euthymia in his classic letters. He tells us that euthymia, which gets translated as tranquility, is all about knowing your path and walking that path. It's the feeling we get when we truly and utterly trust ourselves. You're confident that what you're doing is right, and you don't need to listen left and right for what others have to say. You don't need to second guess and compare yourself to others all the time. You trust in what you're doing because you're trying your best, and you're living accordingly to your values and know it's all you can do. It's the calm confidence you feel when you're living your authentic self in integrity with your highest values. You get that peace of mind, says Seneca, because you have an unchanging standard you live by, not like the rest of mankind who continually ebb and flow in their decisions, floating in a condition where they alternately reject things and seek them. Stoicism will give you many anchors to hold yourself onto, so you can find your path and walk it assured. This will cause you to gain an inner tranquility, a calm confidence at all times, even when life gets tough and shows its meanest kicks and punches. Because you know why you do what you do. You have this inner security that you're doing the right thing and, come what may, you're steadfast like that tower of strength, and nothing can root you out character and becoming better human beings who excellate in life and care about other people and nature itself. One thing the Stoics changed from the Cynics was that they abandoned the Cynic asceticism. Unlike the Cynics, the Stoics favored a lifestyle that allowed simple comforts. They argued that people should enjoy the good things in life without clinging to them. As Marcus Aurelius later said, if you must live in a palace, then you can also live well in a palace. This allowance of comfort was something that made Stoicism more attractive back then, and certainly today too. After the death of Zeno, who by the way was so admired by the Athenians that they built a bronze statue of him, Stoicism kept its place as a leading Athenian school of philosophy, alongside others, until 155 BCE, when something very important happened to ancient philosophy. The heads of Stoicism, Diogenes of Babylon, and other schools of philosophy were chosen as ambassadors to represent Athens in political negotiations with Rome, in Rome. While the negotiations are of little interest, the cultural impact this visit had is not. The Athenians gave packed lectures and sparked an interest in philosophy among the rather conservative Romans. Stoicism became a thriving school in Rome, with all the famous Stoics whose writings serve as the major source of the philosophy today. Seneca, Musonius Rufus, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. We'll get to them shortly. Stoicism was one of the most influential and respected schools of philosophy for nearly 5 subsequent centuries. It was practiced by the rich and the poor, the powerful and the sufferer alike, in the pursuit of the good life. However, after the deaths of its famous teachers, Musonius Rufus, Stoicism fell into a slump from which it has yet to recover. The lack of charismatic teachers and the rise of Christianity are the main reasons for the decline of the once so popular philosophy. The idea of Stoicism, however, found its way into many writings of historical philosophers such as Descartes, Schopenhauer, and Thoreau. And it is finding its way back into the lives of ordinary people like you and me, no offense. This comeback of Stoicism can be traced back to Viktor Frankl's logotherapy and Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavior therapy, both of which were influenced by Stoic philosophy. In more recent years, authors such as Pierre Hadot, William Irvine, Donald Robertson, and especially Ryan Holiday have accelerated the return of Stoicism. Look around. You're in the middle of thousands of excited people, swinging their flags, shouting and cheering madly for their favorite chariot racers down in the arena of the Circus Maximus. Zoom out, go half a mile north, zoom in, roar. Epictetus, and the Roman Emperor, Marcus Aurelius. Straight in front of you, a gladiator fighting a lion on your right, a gladiator aiming his spear in your direction, left, a monstrous elephant sprinting at you. In these dramatic times, our main characters taught and practiced Stoic philosophy. Although philosophy is much less exciting than bloody battles in the Colosseum, where you just got smashed by an elephant, it's the philosophy that survived until today, for good reasons, as you'll learn in the following chapters. Now, we'll look at the 4 Roman Stoics whose writings and teachings survived for nearly 2 millennia and now build the foundation of Stoicism: Seneca, Musonius Rufus, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. It's said that over 1,000 books had been written on Stoic philosophy, but only a handful survived, mainly the ones from these luminaries. Luckily, these brilliant but also flawed men did not live in caves somewhere in the mountains, but all of them were fully engaged in society and worked hard to make the world a better place. You'll meet an incredible wealthy playwright, an equivalent of the modern-day entrepreneur. You'll meet an early feminist and a crippled slave who should become the main influence of the Roman emperor and mightiest person in the world. To stay true to the name of this book, we'll only scratch the surface of these fascinating lives of the 4 most important Stoic philosophers. The most controversial Stoic philosopher, Lucius Annius Seneca, mainly known as Seneca the Younger or simply Seneca, was born around the time of Jesus in Cordoba, Spain, and educated in Rome, Italy. He is renowned as one of the finest writers of antiquity, and many of his essays and personal letters survived and serve as an important source of Stoic philosophy. These writings speak to us because he focused on the practical aspect of Stoicism, down to how to take a trip, how to deal with adversity and its provoked emotions such as grief or anger, how to handle oneself while committing suicide, which he was ordered to do, how to deal with wealth, which he only knew too well, and poverty. Seneca lived an extraordinary life, a life that raises many questions when studied closely. Apart from his letters, which are still read almost 2 millennia after his passing, he made it into the history books for many more reasons. He was a successful playwright. He got extremely wealthy thanks to smart financial undertakings, the modern-day entrepreneur and investor, if you will. He was exiled for committing adultery with the emperor's niece to what he called the barren and thorny rock, Corsica, which, by the way, is a popular holiday destination known for diverse and scenic landscapes. After 8 years of exile, the emperor's new wife wanted Seneca as a tutor to her son Nero. Once Nero became emperor, Seneca was promoted to his advisor and became one of the wealthiest people in the Roman Empire. According to author Nassim Taleb, who devoted a whole chapter to Seneca in his book Anti-Fragile, his fortune was 300 million denarii. For a sense of equivalence, at about the same period in time, Judas got 30 denarii, the equivalent of a month's salary, to betray Jesus. This extreme wealth, while being a philosopher that promoted the indifference of external possessions, is a reason why Seneca sometimes gets called a hypocrite. The other fact that raises questions is that he was the tutor and advisor of Emperor Nero, who was a self-indulgent and cruel ruler, and had his mother and many other people killed. In 65 CE, Nero ordered Seneca to commit suicide because he was supposedly involved in a conspiracy against the emperor. Hypocrite or not, Seneca lived a turbulent life full of riches and power, but also of philosophy and introspection. He understood well enough that he was imperfect. Stoicism remained a constant in his life and stamped his many helpful, the least known of the 4 great Roman Stoics. Gaius Musonius Rufus taught Stoic philosophy in his own school. We know little about his life and teachings because he didn't bother to write anything down. Fortunately, one of Musonius's pupils, Lucius, took notes during the lectures. Rufus advocated for a practical and lived philosophy. As he put it, just as there is no use in medical study unless it leads to the health of the human body, so there is no use to a philosophical doctrine unless it leads to the virtue of the human soul. He offered detailed advice on eating habits, sex life, how to dress properly, and how to behave toward one's parents. Besides thinking philosophy should be highly practical, He thought it should be universal. He argued that women and men alike can benefit from education and the study of philosophy. Musonius Rufus was the most prominent Stoic teacher at the time, and his influence in Rome was respectable. Too much so for tyrannical Emperor Nero that he exiled him to the Greek island Gyaros in 65 CE, and yes, exile was common in ancient Rome. Seneca's description of Corsica as a barren and thorny rock would have fitted much better to Gyaros, which really was, and still is, a desert-like island. After Nero's death in 68 CE, Musonius returned to Rome for 7 years before he got exiled again. He died in around 100 CE and left behind not only the few lecture notes from Lucius, but also his most famous pupil, Epictetus, who, as we'll see right now, became an influential Stoic teacher himself. Epictetus was born a slave in Hierapolis, present-day Pamukkale in Turkey. His real name, if he had one, is unknown. Epictetus simply means property, or the thing that was bought. He was acquired by Epaphroditos, a wealthy freedman, that is, a former slave himself, who worked as a secretary to Emperor Nero in Rome, the place where Epictetus spent his youth. He was crippled in one leg either by birth or by an injury received from a former master. His new master, Epaphroditos, treated him well and allowed him to study Stoic philosophy under the most renowned teacher in Rome, Musonius Rufus. Sometime after Nero's death, in 68 CE, Epictetus was freed by his master, a common practice in Rome with intelligent and educated slaves. He started his own school and taught Stoic philosophy for nearly 25 years, until the Emperor Domitian famously banished all philosophers from Rome. Epictetus fled and moved his school to Nicopolis, Greece, where he led a simple life with few possessions. After the assassination of Domitian, Stoicism regained its respectability and became popular among the Romans. Epictetus was the leading Stoic teacher at the time and could have moved back to Rome but chose to stay in Nicopolis, where he died in around 135 CE. Despite its location, his school attracted students from all around the Roman Empire and taught them, among other things, how to retain dignity and tranquility even in the face of life's hardships. Just like his own teacher Musonius Rufus, Epictetus didn't write anything down. Fortunately, there was again a geek among the students, Arrian, who radically took notes and wrote the famous discourses, Marcus Aurelius. Enough history, it's time to get to the heart of Stoicism. What did these fascinating philosophers believe and teach exactly? How did they plan to keep their promise of a supremely happy and smoothly flowing life? How can their principles prepare us to face whatever challenge life throws at us? And how can we tame our emotions and become an unshakable tower of strength? It's simple. You need to go out in the real world and train like a warrior philosopher. But first, you need to know the rules to play by, you need to know what to fight for, and you need to know which direction to take. These are the core principles of Stoicism that you will learn in this part. Now, you might think this should be fairly easy. Spit it out. What are the core principles? I thought the same when I stumbled upon Stoicism the first time. I quickly got hooked, read quite a bit about it, and told friends about this cool philosophy. But when they wanted to know what it exactly was, then I failed miserably at explaining it. I realized that despite the many texts I'd read, I hardly knew anything about Stoicism. I couldn't even manage to explain it properly to friends. As it turned out, it's not so easy to get a simple overview of the philosophy. The original texts, consisting of lecture notes, personal letters, and diary entries, don't offer a clear-cut answer like one out of a textbook. And even modern books lack foolproof explanations, I find. It's often a mix of fantastic Stoic ideas, which are definitely worth studying, but fail to bring across a simple overview to hold on to. This is basically the idea behind the Stoic happiness triangle. It gives you a simple overview of the core principles of Stoicism. If you know the triangle, you know and are able to explain the most important aspects of what Stoicism is, even to a 5-year-old. It's the best I could come up with to present Stoic philosophy in a simple and visual way, combining ancient and modern literature. I hope you'll find it helpful. And keep in mind that the Stoic happiness triangle is not what the Stoics taught per se. It's my visualization of their core teachings. In our actions and living in harmony with deep values, this is obviously easier said than done. What supports this ambitious goal is to separate good from bad and focus on what we control. Focus on what you control. This is the most prominent principle in Stoicism. At all times, we need to focus on the things we control and take the rest as it happens. What already is has to be accepted because it's beyond our power to undo it. What's beyond our power is ultimately not important for our flourishing. What's important for our flourishing is what we choose to do with the given external circumstances. So no matter the situation, it's always within our power to try to make the best with it and to live in harmony with our ideal self. Take responsibility. Good and bad come solely from yourself. This follows the first two corners that say external things don't matter for the good life, so living with arete, which is within your control, is enough to flourish in life. Also, you're responsible for your life because every external event you don't control offers an area you can control, namely, how you choose to respond to this event. This is crucial in Stoicism. It's not events that make us happy or miserable, but our interpretation of those events. This is when a tower of strength can be born, the moment you decide to give outside events no more power over you. That's of course just the frame of the triangle, and we barely scratched the surface. In the coming pages, we'll look at each corner in detail with clarifying ideas and metaphors, and we'll get to know the villain that hinders so many of us from expressing our highest self moment to moment to moment. But first, let's remember the surfing analogy, the little book of Stoicism 40. Up next is the highly important but not so fun theory part at the beginning of your first surf lesson. Oh, there we go. Some wise guys run straight into the water, despite the warnings. It always happens. Here's the cool thing. Once we're done here and you follow them in the water, you'll do better immediately because they lack the basics. And that's when you need to see their faces. Priceless. However, some will come back earlier because they've realized they're lacking something or they've hurt themselves. Anyway, let's start without the runaways and you'll get in the water before you know it. On the sand, get set, go. The first corner of the Stoic happiness triangle is live with arete. The classic translation for this Greek word is virtue or excellence. I prefer how Brian Johnson, the philosopher behind the website optimize.me, translates arete. Expressing the highest version of yourself, moment to moment to moment. Because of this deeper meaning of the word, and because it apparently was one of the highest ideals of Greek culture, let's use the original word for the name of this first corner of the triangle. We'll necessarily use the common English translation virtue too, so keep that in mind. The ultimate goal of Stoicism is positioned in the center of the triangle, eudaimonia, to live a happy and smoothly flowing life. To achieve this goal, we need to be on good terms, with our inner daemon, the highest version of ourselves, our natural inborn potential. In whatever you do, imagine there are two lines, the higher line indicating what you're capable of and the lower line what you're actually doing. Living with arete is about trying to reach the higher line and express what you're capable of in this very moment. That's actualizing the highest version of yourself. That's being on good terms with your inner daemon. That's when you achieve the happy and smoothly flowing life call. Now, this perfect actualization of our highest selves might not be too hard to express in single situations or in our imagination, but drag us out in the real world and we fail miserably. And that's okay. That's what we're here for. Learning about ourselves and how to express our highest version moment to moment to moment. That's why we're trying to get better. That's why we're trying to improve our virtue. Think of arete, or virtue, as a form of wisdom or strength that helps you do the appropriate thing at all times, so that your actions are in harmony with your highest self, courageous, disciplined, and kind, for example. Virtue is what helps you close the gap between what you're actually doing and what you're capable of. The bigger that gap, the further away you are from eudaimonia, and the worse off you are. Because somewhere in the darkness of the gap, they are lurking. The bad guys lead by regret, anxiety, and disillusionment. All right, Virtue is about trying to be the best you can be in every moment. And if you're able to do that, then you'll have a good relationship with your highest self and will live a eudaimonia. Regret and anxiety to crawl out of the darkness and spread misery. This is highly important to know, but let's be honest, it doesn't help much yet. I mean, don't we all want to be the best we can be anyway? I sure hope so. Now, apart from living with arete, the Stoics used another stock phrase for the same goal of expressing the highest version of yourself, living in agreement with nature. Let's unravel that and see whether we're smarter afterward. The Stoics believed that nature wants us to thrive in life. This is why the inner daemon, our highest self, had been planted within all of us, like a divine seed, so that we have it in our natural potential to become that highest version of ourselves. As Musonius Rufus said, we're all born with an inclination toward virtue. In other words, it's our nature to complete what's been started with that divine seed and bring our human potential to life. So, a person's virtue depends on their excellence as a human being, on how well they perform their natural potential. To be virtuous, then, is to live as nature designed us to live. This is where the Stoic aphorism, living in agreement with nature, comes from. Put simply, virtue is the same thing for all living beings, the perfection of their own nature. So, living with arete is basically to complete our nature. Without that completion, we lack something, and our lives will remain unfulfilled. It's clear, if we don't live up to our innate potential, we'll never be fulfilled. Let's look at an example in nature. The natural potential of a grape seed is to grow into a grapevine and bear grapes. So a grape seed lives with arete, or in agreement with nature, when it fulfills its natural potential by growing into a grapevine and producing grapes. Just as it's enough for the good life for the grapevine to produce grapes, it's enough for us to express the highest version of ourselves moment to moment to moment. That's all it takes. Nothing external is required to get to the good life. No villa by the beach, no diamond rings, no porcelain plates, and generally, nothing that hasn't been planted within as natural potential. And that's something that makes Stoicism so appealing. The potential to live the good life is within all of us. Whether we're rich or poor, healthy or sick, model-like beautiful or other kind of beautiful, all of us can get to the good life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll learn more about the unimportance of external things in the second corner of the Stoic H. Your natural potential lies in your highest version of yourself, yet there's more. The Stoics argued that the most significant difference with other animals is the human's ability to use reason. Stoic teacher Epictetus explained that what separates us from wild beasts and sheep is our rational element, and not the naked skin, weaker bones, or missing tails. We negate our very humanity and fall to the state of a sheep when we let our actions become impulsive and inconsiderate. He asked, when our actions are combative, mischievous, angry, and rude, do we not fall away and become wild beasts? Epictetus's point is that our ability to use reason is at the core of our natural potential we need to fulfill, and it shows best in our actions by expressing it moment to moment to moment. On one hand, the ability to use reason is our most precious gift, and, if we live by it, we'll have a happy and smoothly flowing life, like a grapevine that produces grapes. On the other hand, it's our heaviest burden because if we fail to live by it, we fall to the level of a beast, negate our humanity, and won't live a happy life, much like a grapevine that fails to produce edible grapes. For the Stoics, then, it's reasonable to always try to be the best you can be. We all have this seed of reason, this seed of our highest self, planted within, and therefore, we've got the potential to live a virtuous life. That is, a life led by reason and expressing our ideal self. This expression shows as generally honorable and praiseworthy actions that benefit ourselves and others. As learned earlier, virtue is for all living beings the perfection of their own nature. In the case of humans, then, virtue is the perfection of reason. Put differently, living with arete is the perfection of expressing our highest self in every moment. Remember, living with arete, virtue, reason, and in agreement with nature are all different expressions for the same goal. In Stoic philosophy, it's clear that the perfection of reason not only included rational, but also social actions in the form of duties to our fellow men, such as honoring our parents, being agreeable to our friends, and being interested in the well-being of mankind. As rational and social creatures, we should therefore apply reason and express our highest selves to three main areas of life: harmoniously with others and contribute to the well-being of mankind. In the universe, as citizens of the vast cosmos, we should try to live harmoniously with nature, calmly accept events that happen to us, and try to respond wisely. I know this whole arete, virtue, reason, and fulfilling our nature idea is highly abstract, and it's difficult to have a clear understanding of how this looks like in practice. Luckily, the Stoics used a more graspable classification of virtue that divided it into 4 desirable character traits known as the 4 cardinal virtues. Before we look at them, though, let's quickly look at the Stoic sage, the hypothetical ideal the Stoics used to portray the perfectly wise and good person, the Adonis of character, if you will. You might have been wondering, is it even possible to be the best we can be in every moment? No, it's not. This is why the Stoics use the sage as an ideal, because there are no perfect humans. And we don't need to be perfect for the Stoics, but we can at least try to be as good as possible. This is why they contemplated the sage. They wanted to be as good as possible, and just like the sage, attain perfect eudaimonia. He lives in total harmony with himself, the rest of mankind, and nature as a whole, describes Donald Robertson, because he follows reason and accepts his fate graciously, insofar as it is beyond his control. He has risen above irrational desires and emotions to achieve peace of mind. His character is absolutely praiseworthy, honorable, and beautiful. No wonder the sage is a hypothetical ideal, but the Stoics say it's beneficial to have someone to look up to and compare ourselves against. The sage makes it easier to imagine our ideal self and acts like a signpost, showing the direction. Now let's look at the 4 virtues with which we can try to deliver a sage-like performance. The 4 cardinal virtues. You and me, we get closer to our common goal of the good life by making progress toward living with arete. Now, we can evaluate this progress in 4 broad character traits the Stoics adopted from the Socratic philosophy. They divided virtue into the 4 cardinal virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Living by these qualities makes a strong character and lets you take generally honorable and praiseworthy actions just like the sage. The opposite immoral and wicked character traits are known as the 4 cardinal vices. Kakia is the Greek word that opposes arete, and it makes. Wisdom is about understanding how to act and feel appropriately. Wisdom includes excellent deliberation, healthy judgment, perspective, and good sense. It opposes the vice of folly or thoughtlessness. Justice is about knowing how to act and feel well in our relationships with others. Justice includes good-heartedness, integrity, public service, and fairness. It opposes the vice of wrongdoing or injustice. Courage is about knowing how to act and feel correctly when facing fearful situations. Courage includes bravery, perseverance, honesty, and confidence. It opposes the vice of cowardice. Self-discipline, or temperance, is about knowing how to act and feel right, despite emotions such as strong desire, inner resistance, or lust. Self-discipline includes orderliness, self-control, forgiveness, and humility. It opposes the vice of excess. These are definitely character traits worth striving for, right? If you're anything like me, these make intuitive sense, and we all, even across different religions and cultures, value these same traits in people among us and ourselves. When you read through those, you might think you're good at justice because you always treat others with exceptional fairness, but you're not so good at self-discipline because you often struggle with sticking to that one glass of Rioja. Now, even though it makes perfect sense to say that you're better at some of them and worse at others, for the Stoics, it's always the whole package that counts. Virtue is an all-or-nothing package. The Stoics offered an analogy to clear things up. Someone can be a poet, an orator, and a general, but at the same time he's still only one individual. And so too are the virtues unified in one but can be applied to different areas of action. So this person can be an excellent poet, an okay orator, and a lousy general. But what matters is the person as a whole, and not the single actions in their respective areas. And if we think about it, this all-or-nothing package makes sense. After all, we don't want to call a highly self-disciplined and courageous bank robber a virtuous person. Perfect virtue is an ideal only the sage can reach, but it's encouraging to see that what matters is you as a whole being. You can grow and ripen as a whole person, and it doesn't matter whether someone observes your virtuous actions or not. Making progress and trying to be the best you can be is enough. So virtue is essentially one form of practical wisdom, to know what's the appropriate thing to do and to actually do it. And keep in mind that just like a grapevine won't produce perfect grapes in its first years and will continue to have some sour grapes even in its prime, you too will get better if you try to be your best, but you will also continue to show some flaws. This imperfection is perfectly natural and something the Stoics observed in their own lives. Here's an example from Seneca. When the light has been taken away and my wife has fallen silent, aware as she is of my habit, I examine my entire day, going through what I have done and said. Seneca pleaded his case at his own court every night and shared some examples in his letter on anger. My favorite story is when at some event he got angry because he was not seated in a place of honor he thought he deserved. He spent the evening being angry with the host who seated him and with the guests who were seated above him. "You lunatic," he wrote in his journal, "what difference does it make what part of the couch you put your weight on?" The point is, nobody will ever be perfect in all their actions, and as long as we're trying our best, this doesn't matter. The world isn't black and white. We can't always tell what the right thing to do is, but we can always try to act with our best intention. And that's what I find is the easiest way to understand living with arete. At all times, try to be the best you can be. Try to choose the appropriate action response, and simply try to be a good person with concern for others and nature as a whole. In other words, develop your character. And that's what we'll look at after an important side note. Attention, literally. If we want to be the best we can be in every situation, if we want to live with arete, then we need to be aware of our every step. Today we call this mindfulness. The Stoics use the term attention, prosoke. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, we should pay vigorous attention to the performance of the task in hand with precise analysis, with unaffected dignity, with human sympathy, with dispassionate justice. We can achieve such a mind free of other thoughts by performing each action as if it were the last of your life, each instant, and he wills his actions fully. Even if this consciousness which never sleeps is the Stoics' goal, Epictetus said that it's not possible to be faultless, but we can try, and we must be content if by never remitting this attention, we shall escape at least a few errors. Character beats. Beauty. Lay aside the senator's dress and put on rags and appear in that character. No matter which role you happen to play in society, no matter if you wear a suit and tie or socks and sandals, Epictetus is pointing out that what matters is your core, your character. The only way to recognize a true Stoic, then, is by their character. Think about someone you know who has a character of granite. Bruno comes to my mind. Bruno was one of my early soccer coaches. He was dependable, trustworthy, and most importantly, he was consistent in his actions. He was fair and honest, not only when it was convenient, but always. He was a man solid as a rock with a pinch of fantastic humor. I am sure you can think of a Bruno in your own life, and it becomes clear why Stoicism values a person's character so greatly. Character beats beauty, I once wrote in an article. This is probably not true for our times, which will be referred to as the beauty mania epoch in history books, but it's definitely true in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics would go a step further and claim that character beats not only beauty, but also riches, power, and even the Joker. Being a person of virtue really means to excel at one's character and always trying to do your best and what's generally honorable and praiseworthy. Virtue really is the highest good in Stoicism, and living by it will ultimately shape you into a genuinely good person, and that will come with extra bonuses, Let me explain. Let's go back to Bruno. Do you think his consistently fair and honest actions went unnoticed? No. He got promoted as a coach many times and became one of the most important figures at the club. As far as I know, everyone loved and appreciated him. His trustworthy and steadfast character brought him many bonuses. Just to mention a few: love and admiration from his players, respect and power at the club, and so on. And thanks to these bonuses, Bruno most certainly experienced feelings of joy and worthiness, and so it can be in our lives too. When we act bravely, honestly, and just, then we might get some good feelings in return. When you raise your voice against Jimmy the bully, thing to do, and not because you'll feel great afterward and you'll get a chance for a date. The added bonuses are uncertain and not under your control. You only control your action and not what happens afterward. Yes, you might feel good about helping her. Yes, you might get her number. But also you might get slapped in the face by the bully, and you might get ignored by the girl. So, a Stoic should be willing to act with courage, despite his feelings pulling him back, rather than because of possible future benefits. Marcus Aurelius describes this elegantly in his Meditations. He distinguishes between 3 types of people. The first type of people, after doing a deed of kindness to another, is quickly to demand the favor in return. The second type of people are not so quick to ask for a return of the favor, but privately think of the other as their debtor. The third type of people are just like the vine which has produced grapes and looks for nothing else once it has borne its own fruit. Like a horse after its race or a bee after producing honey, this third type ask for nothing but pass on to the next action, just as the vine passes on to bear grapes again in due season. It's in our nature to do good to others, and we should do it for its own sake. The Stoic love of mankind. Act for the common welfare. We're social creatures with a natural affection toward other people. Stoic philosophy is full of goodness, gentleness, love for human beings, and attention to the common good, says Seneca. The goal is to be useful, to help others, and to take care of ourselves and everybody else. The Stoics nurtured this idea that we should be concerned with other people, wish them to flourish, and develop a sense of kinship with the rest of mankind. Treat even strangers and those who oppose us as relatives, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. We're all citizens of the same world. This shared affinity forms the basis for mutual love and friendship. A person cannot attain anything good for himself, says Epictetus, unless he contributes some service to the community. That's the nature of the social and rational animal we are. We're designed to live among other human beings, very much like bees, says Musonius Rufus. A bee is not able to live alone. It perishes when isolated. And Marcus conveniently adds, what brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. Our actions must benefit the common welfare, or they won't benefit ourselves. We're like a massive organism. Our social duty is to feel a concern for all mankind, to work together, and to help each other. For all that I do, says Marcus, should be directed to this single end, the common benefit and harmony. We cannot express our highest selves without at the same time contributing to the common good. If we seek the very best in ourselves, we will actively care for the well-being of all other human beings. The best for others will be the best for you. It's not that we are social in the sense that we like being around other people. It's in the deeper sense that we couldn't exist without the help of others. Therefore, when we do good to others, we actually benefit ourselves. Benefiting others is a form of virtue, and it ultimately benefits ourselves as virtue is its own reward. Now that you know doing good to others benefits yourself, you could selfishly do good to others, all for your own benefit. And ultimately, it doesn't matter whether we do good to others for selfish or altruistic reasons as long as the intention. The Stoic happiness triangle 55 is to act for the common welfare. Remember the 3 types of people Marcus describes? The first always looking for a return, the second thinking that the other is his debtor, and the third, who is more like a grapevine, producing grapes and not looking for anything in return. It's his social duty to do good to others, and he won't look for anything in return. Marcus says that fulfilling your social duties will simply give you the best chance at having a good life. That's the reward for acting for the common welfare, not gratitude, admiration, or sympathy. These are uncertain additional bonuses, and shouldn't be the reason for your actions. So even Marcus Aurelius acted for the common good for a selfish reason, because he thought it would give him the best chance for a good life. Living with arete and directing one's actions toward the common good is its own reward. This is our nature, and it's ultimately our best chance to live a happy and smoothly flowing life. We must not look or wish for added bonuses such as admiration from others because they aren't within our control and can fade quickly. But the wise person can lose nothing, Seneca argues. Their own goods are held firm, bound in virtue, which requires nothing from chance and therefore can't be either increased or diminished. Your character, stemming from your actions, is what you can rely on at all times. In Stoic philosophy, it's enough to try to express, "Of things some are in our power, and others are not." These are the very first words in Epictetus' Enchiridion. As we learned earlier, Enchiridion translates into ready at hand, like a dagger, and the separation between what is in our power and what is not is something we should always have ready at hand, ready to help us deal with whatever life throws at us. The central teaching of Epictetus was that there are things which are up to us and things which aren't. We should always make the best use of what is in our power and take the rest as it happens. This idea is the cornerstone of the Stoic happiness triangle 57 philosophy, and therefore builds the second corner of our Stoic happiness triangle. Imagine you hold in your hands a doll that looks just like you. Let's call it a voodoo doll. Beautiful. Now, you walk over to the window, open it, and throw your doll out into the street. You stay inside and hope for a sunny day with some lucky happenings. All of a sudden, life becomes an emotional roller coaster, without you having a say in it. Pug marks you, suit kicks you around, and Prius rolls you over. Ugh. Life sucks. Now, nobody would actually do that with their own voodoo doll. Or would they? Isn't that exactly what many people do by worrying about stuff outside their own control? Right. That's the root cause of emotional suffering, to worry about outside events. Does Stephen like me? Will I get that job? Why am I not taller, thinner, better looking? Handing power to things we have no direct control over causes emotional suffering. This is why the Stoics would tell us to take that imaginary voodoo doll back into our own hands and let ourselves decide when to get kicked around and not. The point is, the Stoics want us to focus on what we control and let the pugs mark where they may. What is it then that we have control over? Only a few things, our voluntary judgments and actions. We can decide what events mean to us and how we want to react to them. We'll look at our judgments more closely in the third corner of the Stoic happiness triangle. And our actions, we can choose to align them with virtue, as discussed in the previous part. All else is not under our control. That's from the weather to other people and their actions to our health and body, and literally everything that happens around us, right? Our body, for example, is not completely under our control. We can surely influence it with our behavior. We